What's up guys, Erroneous here, back with another Raid Shadow Legends video, and in today's video I'm going to be going over the new legendary fragment summon champion, and that is going to be Ugar the Worm Eater. Let's get into it. Alright, so in today's video we're going to talk about Ugar and whether or not I will be going for him, and whether or not I think that you should be going for him. Is it even worth your time? So let's just hop right over. Let's check out his kit and we'll go over him, and then I'll go over which places I think that he's going to be really good in. Now, he is going to be an arena champion in general, so we'll just throw that out there right now. But yeah, let's hop over there right now. All right, so we do have Ugar here, and Ugar the Worm Eater, he is going to be a legendary Ogre champion. So he does look pretty sweet, not gonna lie. Obviously, they knock it out of the park a lot of times, like 99% out of, I'd say 100%. But there has been a couple of, questionable champions that they made, like Ulfrig, for example. He's very basic, so I'll say 99% of the time they knock it out of the park with their aesthetics. Now, in terms of Worm Wrath, the A1, he attacks one enemy, 80% chance of stealing a random buff from the enemy, also 80% chance of placing a block buffs debuff on the enemy for 2 turns. It does book out to 100%, so that's pretty cool. But he's Spirit Affinity. You're going to face a lot of Magic Affinity champions in Arena still. I mean, there are going to be times where you do face a good amount of Force Affinity champions as well, or Neutral Affinity champs like Duchess, right? But Duchess sometimes has really high resistance, so you will have to build this guy out for accuracy for this specific ability, right? So in terms of stealing a buff is definitely a target for polymorph for getting sheeped, right? So you don't want to keep getting sheeped over and over and over, so that's a little bit of a problem. Will this be also good in other areas? Yes, it'll be good in general progression for PvE. He's going to be a very strong champion for the Ogre tribes in general. So, I know a lot of people think super endgame right now, and a lot of people are endgame, but in terms of early and mid-game players, if you don't have a decent champion for Ogre tribes and you're trying to push faction wars, he would be an amazing asset to your Faction Wars team. He's also fairly good in terms of the A1 for Hydra. So if you do have that stupid Head of Mischief, or whichever head steals the buffs, you could potentially go ahead, attack him with this ability, stealing a random buff, and then chance of placing a block buffs, assuming that he doesn't already have a block debuffs buff on him. But if he does, maybe that's the only one, and you steal it and then place block buffs. So that would be really, really cool for 2 turns. And then on the A2, Earth Puncture attacks all enemies, 75% chance of removing all buffs from all enemies. Also very strong in Hydra, very strong in general progression, because in general progression, there is no polymorph, right? So if you're just thinking PvP only, then yes, this is a little bit challenging to use. Personally, I think they should have kind of mimicked Timit the Fool's ability, where he decreases the buff duration by 3 turns. That's probably one of the strongest abilities. Decreasing buff duration cannot get polymorphed. It just cannot. So adding another champion that removes all buffs from all enemies is a surefire way to say, here, you want to turn into a sheep, buddy? There you go. Turn into a sheep. Meh. Every single time. So 75% chance of placing a weaken after he removes all the buffs, right? So if he doesn't remove all the buffs from champions, then he's not going to go ahead and place the weakens on the champions that still have the buffs if they are having a block debuffs buff, right? So you have a chance to get a sleep, a chance to not potentially remove all the buffs. Because it's attacks all enemies, it's going to be also potential chance to weak hit on enemies. So any magic champions, if you weak hit, he's not going to remove all the buffs. Now, if it said removes all buffs, then attacks the enemies, that's a different story, right? So that's kind of, it's a good ability, but it's weak in terms of late to end game content for PvP. Okay, and a lot of people nowadays do think and focus mostly on PvP because there are tons and tons of players in the game right now that are end game. So right now, most players are like, if they're not damage dealers, if they're not doing damage, if they're not turning into a sheep, unless if they do turn into a sheep, then I'm not going for them. If they turn into a sheep, I don't want them. And that's what this guy reeks of, sheep. So that's a problem there. Now, in terms of damage, who knows? We don't have the multipliers yet. I would love to see that he does hit damage. If he does damage, people are going to go for him, 100%. Because if he does damage and removes buffs, if you do face enemies that don't have polymorph, then you have a higher chance of removing the buffs and then doing solid damage, or doing damage and then removing the buffs, right? So that would be kind of cool. Now on the A3 Ogren Fortitude, he places an increased accuracy buff on all allies for 2 turns. It seems like they're bringing in increased accuracy champs left and right. I mean, Timit, I'm pretty sure, also has increased accuracy, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check that really quickly. So Timit the Fool, I actually just pulled him recently, right? And actually, I can't see it from here. Let's go in here. Let's just search for him, and we'll showcase Timit really quickly on his kit. So with Timit, for his skills, does he have increased accuracy? Yes, he does. Attacks on enemies before attacking, places 50% increased accuracy buff on all allies for 2 turns. Okay, so Timit also has increased accuracy, also a fragment champion. So in terms of this guy's kit, also another increased accuracy champ. We can't say that that's a bad thing. That's actually really good, especially for general progression for early and mid game players. Also really strong in Hydra, also really strong in Faction Wars. Also places an increased defense buff on all allies whose defense is higher than or equal to their attack, which is really nice. And then if an ally's attack is higher than their defense, places a 50% increased attack on them for 2 turns instead. So this is really cool. It's on a 3-turn cooldown, which is not bad. But he doesn't have like a speed aura. His aura is 70 accuracy in all battles. Actually, no, it's in arena battles, not in all battles. Okay, interesting. So this is sort of like a pseudo Mithrala ability, except Mithrala just places increased defense and places increased attack on the entire team. So Mithrala is just better hands down in terms of her A3 ability, or whichever ability it is that places the increased defense and increased attack on the entire team. So in terms of his ability here, it's okay. It's not bad, but you kind of want to focus. Do you want defense damage dealers or do you want attack damage dealers? Because a lot of times you're just going to be bringing in a Arbiter or a Duchess, other champions that place increased attack or speed them up and place increased attack. So do you really need this guy for arena? I'm going to say not really if you've been playing for a long time. However, if you don't have a huge arsenal of champions on your account, and also if you need faction guardians for the future in case you pull a copy of him, then yeah, absolutely go for him. He's pretty niche because, again, it's just removes all buffs, attacks them. He's an HP based champion. He can be kept alive for a longer period of time, so that's a positive. But is he going to break the meta? Not really. He has to hit damage. He has to do big damage in order to break the meta, because you're having to add accuracy, which means you're going to have a lot less damage on him. It's harder to build a damage dealer when they need a ton of accuracy to remove buffs. So that's a little bit of a problem. Let's go to the passive. Whenever an enemy is revived, instantly activates Earth Puncture, okay, which is the A2, which removes the buffs and attacks them. If an enemy is revived by a champion from the Lizardmen faction, the effects of Earth Puncture cannot be resisted. So that's pretty cool, but it has to have Pythion revive and nobody else. So it says again, if an enemy is revived by a champion from the Lizardmen faction. So if you have a Lizardmen faction like Pythion on the team that you're going up against and you have this guy and they revive with Uko and not the Lizardman Pythion, then he doesn't go into the Earth Puncture ability, right? So that's a little bit of a problem. So that's kind of annoying. There's ways around that on the enemy team. You just have to know this guy's abilities when you go up against him so that you can go around his passive effect. Passive effect will only activate when an enemy is revived using an active skill. So that means, you know, if they have block revive and things like that, it just won't work. Or sorry, not block revive. The revive on death. If they have a revive on death on the team, so that means that, you know, Sun Wukong, it's not going to work against, unfortunately, because that's a passive. So anytime, and then there's some champions that are out there that can revive after they kill an enemy. They revive an ally, which is also a passive. So yeah, so that's kind of annoying. It doesn't work on everybody or every single type of effect. Instantly activates Earth Puncture, will not place the skill on cooldown. If there are multiple champions on the team with this skill, only one will activate. It is on a 1-turn cooldown if you book it out, 2-turn if it's not booked. So it's decent. A lot of people are not going to have this guy booked right away. Some people will, but the free-to-play players and low spenders may not have him booked right away. So keep that in mind. Now, he's a decent champion. I will say I'm probably going to go for him. Is he going to break the meta? Not at all. He's not going to break the meta. He's not going to be super crazy. People are probably going to put him in the vault for a little bit until they find use cases for him. For me, again, he's probably going to be in the vault for a little bit. I'm not going to bring him out right away. When they do nerf polymorph, maybe I'll bring him out then if I do end up getting him. That's just me, but leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see you on a video soon. Take care.